This is Adam from Beyond Medicine. Today I want to talk about Immortality Asgard. Yeah. Now, Asgard is a very unique substance. Firstly, it has 20 levels of immortality, so obviously it has a strong regenerative effect on the body. It's the second strongest after Gaia, although they're not necessarily to be seen as stronger per se. They're just different levels and deeper levels of immortality, and the whole range is really designed so that we have a different experience with the immortality each time we take it, and we can continue to get value out of it, so the body doesn't get used to one particular thing and just keeps responding to the message of the immortal jellyfish. What makes Asgard quite different is in Asgard I've cooked up the Norse runes. Now I have a fairly unique solvent which allows inanimate things to come to life, so to give them it kind of dialogues with the substances. Now I've done this with gold, and what came out of the gold when I cooked gold up in the substance is that it brought its living nature to life. So it actually, I saw it as like a living thing. And this is kind of what it's done with the runes. We have an activation song as well in there, sung by Anaruna. And what that's designed to do is to activate the runes, to provide a bridge between the information that these runes carry and yourself. Now, what makes this quite unusual as a substance is that, when I asked myself, like as a question, like what do these runes do? And I went to sleep. I had an image when I woke up from the dream of the runes in myself reaching out to the runes in everything. So if we assume that the runes are the base coding of reality, the language of reality, they then are able to reach out to the other runes everywhere. So if you imagine these runes are running in the body and they represent and exist in everything else, like stones and trees and other people, then it's like this massive mycelial network, this internet of information that gets passed between them. And the image I had from the dream was that as the runes slowly come to the surface of the skin, as in we kind of clear our body of the memory inherent in having lived here, we sort of flush that to the surface, the runes become more prominent, and then we're able to reach out more accurately to the world. So what this means, in point of fact, is that the Buddhists talk a lot about the wish-fulfilling gem. And the idea is like you put an idea, or hopefully not a fear, but an idea into the wish-fulfilling gem, and the mind brings it into form. What I'm suggesting here is that the actual mechanism, the actual work being done is being done by the runes. So the runes are making your will be done, in terms of like what you want to come into form. The runes sort of reach out to all the runes in reality and they bring the information back. I saw this quite accurately with my motorbike. I was riding my motorbike and I just knew intuitively when it was safe to go faster or slower. It's like the runes were reaching out like this giant network, this network of information, and feeding information back to me like, okay, it's now safe to go faster. And then I felt quite confident going faster. The actual experience of taking Asgard is quite unusual. It's quite different. It's very different to the other immortalities in that it represents a new installation. So what we experience a lot when we take Asgard is being almost like locked off from the future and the past. So it forces us to be completely present. And I mean, people talk a lot about being completely present, but I was walking the other day and I was on Asgard and I was trying to think of the future. It was like I banged my head against a wall, and then I was trying to think of the past and I banged myself against the wall. So it's almost like you're forced to be in the present, but instead of, like swinging like a monkey on a tree between the future, fears or worries or anticipations or fantasies, or the past, like memory and thoughts and deeds, You know, we often were swinging between these two things, like a monkey on a tree. But if we were to let go of that and just be present, we're very present with what's going on. And then we can really cover the full circle, the 360-degree spectrum of what's within our visual field. We can also go up and down into like the different realms, you know, for example. So no, this is quite esoteric, but it's quite real when you take it. So the experience for me of taking Asgard is like looking down from on high, down, you know, onto the earth. So it's like I had this one image of looking down from a great height down on the earth, and just that perspective, being able to see, you know, oneself from above. You know, the other thing that happened to me on Asgard was I woke up from a dream and I could see myself angry. You know, I was like, and in the dream I was, oh no, in reality, I woke up and I was raging. I was like, why am I raging? But it was like, I was the angry guy. And like, I don't want to be the angry guy. And then I saw my father who was angry, right? And I saw myself being angry. But being able to see myself as that angry person, it's like, I no longer want to be anger's slave. I no longer wanted to ring the bell and I rock up and I appear and like, okay, now I'm going to do anger's bidding, you know? So this was really what I saw, and I was able to like, wow, okay, that's very interesting to see. And I was able to step out of it. So the idea is like, not that we stop being angry per se, but we go into the anger and then we come out of it. So the guy cuts us off, we hoot, and we drive on. We leave the anger behind. Otherwise, it's us who are carrying this coal. But it's very easy when we can see ourselves, we can step outside of ourselves and see ourselves being that person. So whether it's anger, jealousy, fear, hatred, you know, sadness, all of these things, if we can see ourselves doing these things and look at ourselves having these emotions, we can then step out of this and choose something else. We can choose not to engage in it. We're not saying here that we shouldn't have emotions. This is not what we're saying at all. We're just saying go into it completely, but realize that it's something you're going into and it's something you can actually put down. You know, so like pick it up, engage, and put it down. But something like anger, for example, is quite intoxicating. So there's always a story. There's like, you should be angry because everyone else is an idiot and they're doing stupid stuff and the world's a mess, and perfect story to be angry. But it's you who's angry, and you who comes to 4 hours later and was like, where was I for those 4 hours? Oh, I was the angry man for those 4 hours. And I was like, round and round and round. But if in that moment we get angry, you know, someone cuts us off, we hoot, and then we forget about it, then we've conquered anger, you know. And this is once again what the Buddhists talk about. They talk about Mara, the illusion, and the illusion comes as anger, sadness, despair, you know, jealousy, all of these emotions, and it says to us, come on, buy into this experience. And once we've bought into the experience, we're suffering, we're angry. They say when you're angry, you're in hell, you know. And in that moment, if you buy into it, you're in that emotion. So what this is about is to step outside of it, step out of habitual patterning, and just have a look at habitual patterning. This other friend of mine, so he was taking Asgard and he went to Pick and Pay, a local supermarket, for lunch, because that's what he normally does at lunchtime. He goes and eats at Pick and Pay, and he walked around for like 20 minutes. He couldn't find anything he wanted to eat, and then he realized he wasn't even hungry, that he was just going there habitually because that's what he used to do at 1 o'clock when he ate lunch. And then he walked out and he realized, wow, he was just a victim of conditioning, and that conditioning was making him go and do that at that time. You know, a lot of what I saw on Asgard was driving past places I've driven many times, but actually stopping and looking at them. It's like, wow, have I seen this property before? And, you know, the mind has this ability to edit stuff in. It's like from memory, we kind of cut and paste, you know, images into a scenario in order to make it a memory. It's like, oh, I've driven past this before, I know what it looks like. So we don't see it, or we don't hear a particular piece of music because we've heard it so many times. We kind of edit in the information. But this is saying, stop, really listen to it. Be totally present with this moment and realize, what do you want to do? You don't have to necessarily go left or right. You can go straight. Just because you normally go left or right, just that's what you normally do. But if we stop and say, well, I normally go left, but why do I normally go left? Because it's my habitual thing to go left. No, I'm going to go right, or I'm going to go straight. So this is, Asgard really is about possibilities. It's the possibilities to do what it is you want to do. But what we all need is this perspective of what we're doing at all times. And we often don't get this. Things like Vipassana, we get to observe ourselves, but in normal daily life, we don't often get the chance to observe ourselves. We're so caught up in this. But what this Asgard gives us is this third person perspective of ourselves. So we actually get to stand over here and look down on ourselves and see what's going on. Now, what I saw as well was a lot of silence in Asgard. There was normally the mind's quite busy, or my mind's quite busy, thoughts are rising. And if you want to see them like horses, the horses are running past, and we're always jumping on the horse and riding. And so we don't really have much downtime, or like, do we actually even want to be riding a horse at this moment? We just kind of jump on the thought because that's what's happening. So what happens with Asgard is it just stops. Everything stops, the horses stop coming. And then we get to look at the whole scenario in front of us. We get to look at the whole field and sit and observe it. And then after a while, thoughts do return, like a horse comes by, and we get to decide, do I want to ride this horse? Do I want to pet this horse? Do I want to brush this horse? Or should I just let it go? Normally we're so in the habit of conditioned behavior that we're like, oh, I always ride horses, so I'm going to jump on the horse. But what this does is it gives us the space to see that thoughts are perpetually arising, and it's up to us to choose or not choose what to do. Now, this is very good in practice. People talk about this a lot in practice, but the actual experience of it is not that easy to come by, because to stop thoughts from arising is quite difficult. I remember I took the Asgard the one day, and I was walking for about half an hour, and not a single thought arose in my head. I was like, wow, this is very empty. Now, the Buddhists talk a lot about emptiness and form, and that everything exists, emptiness, form, emptiness, form, emptiness, form, and they were always juggling between them. But our experience of it is more like form, 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 thought, 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 thought. We don't often get time out of our experience in order to reflect on it. But what this does is it gives us a space to look down at ourselves and the experience and watch thoughts really arise when they arise. And then we get to decide, do I want to engage this or not? And that's massive. That really is the human condition. If we can see how thoughts arise, when they arise, what they're doing, then we have a lot more control over which thoughts we choose to pick up, or how long we pick them up for, and when we put them down. Now, obviously, this has all sorts of implications and ramifications for all sorts of things, but to just begin this process of engaging with this initially, so we can see this as something that's actually happening, is fundamental to really taking control of our minds. I mean, the flip side is we don't take control of our minds, or the bad side is if we don't, life goes on, nothing changes. But if we really want to make headway in this experience, this perspective of being able to look at ourselves is invaluable, because we don't often get to see ourselves from someone else's perspective. Someone else might be able to point out very quickly what we're doing or not doing, whether it's a therapist or a friend. They're like, oh, you're doing this. Like, oh, I wasn't even aware. But if they give us this reflection, we can see it. But far more powerful if we get to do it ourselves. We get to see ourselves. We sort of bust ourselves at our own game, our own pattern. So like, well, that's actually not so nice or so cool. I don't really want to be doing that. And I was doing this because I got this pattern from my parents or my father or society, and I'm supposed to play it like this. But actually, I didn't sign anything. I didn't agree to this on any level. I'm actually not going to do this. And this is nice, because then it's like we can actually say, well, what do I want to do? What would I like to be playing? What action would I like to be perpetuating? And we can actually very deliberately choose to pick up certain things, as opposed to like just being handed things and like, oh, this is what I must do. But if we put that down, then we have a lot more freedom to really be us, which is what everyone's talking about. Even when I was taking the Asgard, I found I was driving with my left hand, which is like, that's kind of weird, but the body was almost just breaking the habitual thing of driving with the right hand. Now, it was quite difficult driving with the left hand because I had to cross over my right hand to use the gears on that side, but it was quite weird, but I just found myself doing it. So the more we break habitual patterning, the more free we become. And like it or not, from having a morning coffee or brushing our teeth or meeting friends for drinks or going and doing certain things, a lot of it's habitual. And the more we mix this up, the more fresh the experience is, the more we actually get from it. Because, the more we do something, the more we edit stuff in. And then it just becomes like a movie we've seen and we're almost glazed over, like the horse with blinkers. We're seeing it, but we're not. So this is taking the blinkers off and like, wow, all this color, all these things around me that I missed before because I was so busy in my mental reverie. And I was using the mind to sort of blank a lot of this out because I thought I knew it, and I do know it, but in the detail is everything. And if we really pay attention to the detail, it will reveal everything to us. And we want to have as much awareness of whatever it is we want at any time. So, Asgard can't be completely talked about without Gaia, right? So if Asgard is the sky perspective looking down on us, Gaia is the down on the ground experience. And it's almost like these two have been designed as companion substances, earth and sky, Asgard the sky, Gaia the earth. And, the symbol of what travels between earth and sky is the eagle. The eagle goes from the earth, it flies into the sky, it spends time in the sky, it comes down to earth, it catches its prey, and it comes back up and has its nest up in the sky, but also on the earth. And this is what we should become, like the eagle. That capacity to move between perspectives of high and low. Not that high is better than low, it's just different, on the earth or above the earth. We need both because we exist on the earth, but if we can see ourselves from on high, we can get a perspective of where we actually are in the whole thing. And then we can look at ourselves like, well, I located myself there, but this is not the best place to be because I now have the perspective of the eagle, and the eagle can see that I'm living there, but I'm in a floodplain and the flood's going to come and take me out. But if we're just living down on the ground, we might not know this. So this is how these two are designed. Just a little therapeutic tip on how to use them. Asgard can be very strong. It can be quite empty. There's only so much sky space perspective we can take in one week without getting a bit disconnected. So what I recommend is like a dose of Asgard followed by 4 days or 5 days of either Gaia or Vishnu, just to keep the whole thing going, to allow us to integrate, and use it like this: a dose 4 days on or 5 days on the other one, then dose. It's in the beginning, one can take a few more doses, dose of Asgard, just to get the feeling of it. But if you start feeling a bit spacey or disconnected, it's good to return to the other ones because they are able to earth one. I do believe this is a new technology, which is really fascinating. And anyone who's interested in actually taking control of their mind and not having it just run its own movie at your expense. And this, like it or not, is what happens most of the time. We have thoughts and emotions that arise and we're not necessarily in control of them, and we get prodded to act on them or not act on them. So we're kind of being pushed through the maze a little bit. But what this does is say, like, okay, I'm the rat, I'm stepping out of the maze. I'm going to look at the maze. I'm going to decide, well, do I even want to go where I'm supposed to be going when the bell rings? It's like, actually not. I want to go off and do this because it's all about possibilities and potential and adventure and excitement. And yes, we've been given this maze to run through called life, but how we do it is entirely up to us. And the more we come from an unconditioned experience, the more freedom we actually have in this. And this is what it's all about ultimately, is freedom, because in that freedom, we really get to engage what is important to us. So this is, I believe, how Asgard is to be used. It can be used in conjunction, as I say, with Vishnu or Gaia, ideally Gaia, but Vishnu perfect as well. What's sometimes nice to do is to take it with the golden spiral as well in creation, so that you're in the best possible state while you're in that, you're kind of back in alignment. But yeah, no, this represents a valuable tool, but at the same time to realize that because it's the runes that are cooked up, you actually installing or remembering these runes, which, you know, the runes almost teach you their nature as you go through it. And the runes represent a whole range of, if you imagine the runes are the verbs of reality, they're the processes, the process of becoming or transforming, or, you know, having a lineage, or, you know, the process of the unconscious coming to conscious. These are the things that the runes govern. So, you know, it's a whole journey one goes on when one begins to take Asgard, because it'll begin the process of teaching you the runes, which, and I mean, this is what I saw in a vision of the runes coming down from the sky, but they were the DNA. The DNA was made of the runes. So it's like, if you imagine these DNA spirals, on these spirals were the runes. So they represent, for me, the original language, the language of creation, which allows everything to actually take place. But we obviously can't ingest this all at once. It's too much. But if we can do it slowly with staging, then we can take control over what's actually happening and really live the life we want to live. So that's why I definitely recommend Asgard for everyone, but take it in this way: 1 day on, 4 days off, 1 day on, 4 days off, so that it's less of a shock to the system. But, you know, powerful messages we do need and we do want. We just want to do it in a way that's strategic so that we get the most from it. We don't just get blown out by it. We just get it so we can say, we can take it on, and then we take a few days off, and then we take it again. So this is how it's to be used. Yeah, so that's Asgard in a nutshell. I do hope everyone takes up Asgard, because it does represent a new technology, a new way of existing in the world, and its message is extremely powerful and very beautiful, and I think it will benefit everyone. This is Adam from Beyond Medicine, Asgard.